All right, everyone. So I played RoboCop Unfinished Business, the DLC of the RoboCop game. Now, I loved the first game, the base game. I played it probably 3 or 4 times. Had so much fun doing it. And so when I heard there was a DLC, I could not wait. And now that I've played it through, it took me between 8 and 10 hours. I leave it loving it, just like I did the original game, wanting more DLC. But it also was hit or miss in certain points. I'm going to go through my feelings on it, but I want to get it off, right off the bat here, that I thought it was absolutely phenomenal, and it was a much needed kind of addition to the game, because obviously this came out, I think, 2 years ago, so we finally got some more content on it. So we're going to start with, the game was a little bit harder, I felt, than the original. One of the things I loved so much about the original is that once you get through that first playthrough, obviously there's New Game Plus, and I've done that. And so you could really enjoy this game, especially on New Game Plus, even if you keep it on like a normal difficulty. It's not that it was easy, because the original game wasn't necessarily easy either, but it certainly wasn't as hard, I felt, as this one. It actually kind of, weirdly enough, got easier as the game went on, which part of me enjoys it, right? Because it's like, okay, it gets a little bit easier at the end, because your guy's more powerful. And there were still some really tough moments at the end, like some tough missions. But in the beginning, I really felt like, wow, I got to be careful when I'm using these. I forgot what they were called in the game, but they were health packs, basically. I got to be careful when I'm using them, because I don't know when I'm going to get the next one. So I felt this one was a little bit harder than the original, although I did play the original so long ago that it could have been basically just the same, but I definitely felt it was a little bit harder. The narrative was a lot different in this one. In the first game, you go to all these different places, you kind of meet all these different characters. This game was a little bit structured differently. Obviously, you're in the exact same spot the entirety of the game. You really I don't think, get as deep of a relationship with a lot of the characters as you did in the first game, and that has its pluses and its minuses. On one hand, I actually like the fact that this thing felt like it was moving along easy, right? In the first game, you were going back and forth, go here, go there, and it was fine. I enjoyed the story, I had no problem with it, but this definitely felt like, okay, we're just one long continuation. So I did enjoy that a lot. But at the same time, it's important to point out that because it's kind of put out in this way, there's a lot of still questionable things that happen with the story that leave you a little bit like, I don't know if it's quite as good as maybe the story of the original. So I definitely think the story by the end, and I'm not going to give too many spoilers, or hopefully not any in this video, but I definitely felt like the story, it gets good at the end. I think there's a lot of good moments throughout, but I also felt like everything in the story was a little bit underdeveloped. I feel like they kind of just shove story details at you, and they kind of expect you to be like, oh, okay, I really care about that, when they could have done that in a different way. In the first game, you really have this story that starts at one point, and slowly but surely you build a relationship with all the characters in the game. In this DLC, they kind of just shove a lot of, there's these flashback sequences where you learn a lot about what's going on. And the problem with those is they do a great job, by the way, of explaining how things got the way they are, but they're so short that it becomes this thing where it's like, okay, now I know everything. It didn't slowly build. Like the first game, you learn a little bit more through kind of little bits and pieces throughout. This game, it kind of just throws everything at you at once, and I think it hurts the ability for you to care about the characters as much as you did in the first game. With that being said, I thought the main villain of this thing was actually better than the main villain in the original, right? I definitely think that. I loved the villain in this game. I absolutely loved him. I thought he was not only a really bad guy, which is, I think, key in a villain, but it's kind of like almost like Thanos, where it's like, okay, they're really bad, they're terrible, you have to stop them, they're doing these terrible, inhumane things, but at least, right, it's not something where like, man, this is like a a villain you could never see occurring. It's kind of like, no, actually, you could see this guy, how he got to the point he is. He's a crazy person. He's the worst person in the world, but you can at least, it tracks, right? And so it makes you hate him even more because he's doing all of these evil things, but at least you can understand the process of how he got there. Another thing I thought was a little bit not as cool with the story is in the first game, one of the things I loved was that you have you had multiple endings in the sense that it's not that the ending really changed. It's just, remember that slideshow at the end of the game where it shows you different, how different endings for the characters in there based off your decisions. You could choose kind of who to ally yourself with throughout the game, and I thought that was really cool, right? Like really cool. There was, from what I understood in this one, there was none of that, and that's kind of depressing because I thought that was one of the best parts of the old one, is you can kind of choose who you're allying with, you could choose certain things, and it really added to the game. There was none of that in this one, so maybe there is and I missed it because I only played through it once, but I did not see any of that sort of stuff in there. um you know that's basically all I have for the story. Now for the rest of the game, number one thing is it did exactly what the first game did, in the sense of it makes you feel like you're RoboCop. That's the most important thing. It hits it out of the park. There were some glitches and other things I ran into which I didn't love, but those can be patched, so I'm not really going to complain about much of that. I definitely think the guns, they were a lot cooler in this one. There are so many more enemies they added in. Like, they did add a ton to this. So this, I think, for their first DLC on this game, I think they did exactly, well, I guess adding the new game plus I think might have been DLC technically too, but I think it's well worth the money you spend on it. I think if you love the first one, you'll love this. And I just hope they take this and they say, okay, here's where we did good in the DLC. Here's where we didn't do so good. And I want another one. And I think if they can combine the improvements they made with this one and add in the better parts of the first game, I think you could really have something special on your hands, because I had a ton of fun playing this. I will definitely be playing it again at some point to see if I missed anything, right? Because that potentially could be something. But at the end of the day, I just had to do this video because I love this game. Nobody, when it first came out, not a lot of people were giving it too much of a chance. They thought it was not going to be that great. And to me, this is one of those classics, and it reminds me of an older video game. What I mean by that is, this isn't a game that's trying to tell you log on every day so you get this reward, do this and do that. It's a game that knows exactly what it is. It delivers on the thing it's supposed to deliver on, and when you finish the game, it leaves you wanting a little bit more, and it leaves you with a good taste in your mouth, like, oh my god, this is a really cool game. And I tell everybody about this game that I can. So kudos to the developers, the people, everyone that worked on this game, because they did another great job. And if I were you, I'd go out and certainly pay for this game. If you haven't played the original, on Steam it's on sale for $5. I would certainly, before you spend the 30, go buy the game for $5, and I can almost guarantee you, if you buy that game for $5, you will be buying this DLC for 30 shortly after. So thank you all for watching.